Hey everyone, welcome to another Decisions Lunch and Learn. I'm your host once again, Gregory Goldston. We're going to be followed up by Jared tomorrow and then Jeremy on Thursday. Once again, please feel free to check out the Decisions Solutions Marketplace. We are working on new stuff there all the time for your use. And of course, the Decisions Forum. Great place to look. I'm going to wait for some more people to pile in. It looks like we've got quite a lot coming in today, which is great. Let me just get the Q&A set up so that's all ready to go. And if y'all can pardon me for just a moment, I'm going to switch screens that I'm sharing to get into our environment and get on to these questions. All right, so let me stop sharing. Move to the appropriate screen here. And then let me begin sharing once again. All right, all right. Come on in. I guess while we're waiting on any questions to appear, I can continue on talking about how the health score works because it is interesting. I will say that. So, to find the health score, you first go to info, as you can see here, and then over here under details, you can see what the actual health scores are of your individual designer entities. All right. So, the main health scores right here. This is the cumulative average, the mean of all of the individual categories of health scores. So if we jump in here, you can see that I've got quite a few different structures. I've got some data structures, I've got some flows, I've got some rules, I've got some reports. I don't have any forms or pages yet, but that's all right. This average right here is not the average of all of these added up and then divided by how many there are. It is not the mean of each individual item, but rather the mean of each individual category. So you have to keep that in mind when you're weighting this stuff. For example, I only have one report in this entire project. That one report, however, has a 100% health score. So that is going to pull up all of these other entities, even though there are way more of these in their individual categories. Something to keep in mind when you're working with. Categories are divided into three different kinds of health score categories. There is maintainability, there is performance, and there is security. By the way, anyone in the chat, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm just going over this discussion while we're waiting on questions. And we will be having a video come out on this topic in general. That is why I'm working on it now. So, maintainability is making sure that you can have the things act as you want it to when you move it to a higher environment. So, for example, the flow name or having, where is it? The step names in the flow, right? Ah, Angel, I see that we have a question. I'm going to read it aloud now. I have a couple of questions regarding named sessions best practices. When our dev and test environments were set up, the account used was devdecisions at so-and-so. However, I have concerns regarding the security of using an admin account for the API. Ah, I see. All right, let me unmute you and we can discuss this a little bit more. This is a good question. Pardon me, I'm just trying to look for you to unmute. There you go. You should be able to talk now, Angel.
Yeah. So basically our test and dev, and I'm getting ready to set up our prod, the account utilized again for the name session is decisionsdev.admin, and that doesn't feel like it's part of best practices. And I feel like I need to set up a separate, like, individual account specifically for that as opposed to admin. So I was just curious your guys' thoughts on that.
That's going to depend on your use case. I think that is an understandable thing to take into security considerations because perhaps you have a flow that you're sending them to via an API or like they're accessing a form, and then let's say the form errors out. Maybe there
Mhm.
isn't proper error handling on the form, and instead of sending them to the end step or like the end form session step to kick them out, they're now in the decision studio in this account, which is not what you would want.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's completely understandable in that sort of case that you would want to set up an name session. In order to do that, I'm assuming you know how, but let's just create one right here, test session, and then we'll just pick the account that we want to be able to use it. These are all just testing accounts that I'm using for my own purposes, so I'll just pick one of these. And now, whenever you're calling it by that name session, it's going through that user that's not going to have those permissions that would allow them to access other areas of the portal. Now, you do have to make sure that if they are calling it by name session, that account that's part of that name session would have the appropriate permissions needed to actually run some of the stuff, right? So, in admin, by default, you're just going to be able to access everything you've created. With a separate account, you're going to have to manually assign those permissions. So, if you're calling for example, this healthy flow via API, I've got to make sure that either in the flow categories or in the individual flow that I'm setting the permissions for my account that's now going to be using that name session, right?
Right.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's definitely worthwhile to consider what you want your users to be able to access as far as admin account wise or further. I cannot say with certainty that doing the admin account would result in a security problem, but it is probably a good idea to look into other options to be able to replace it if you can.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, but again, we're kind of curious what your guys' viewpoint was,
Mm.
given that it was decisions who set it up. So, okay.
Yeah, a lot of practices will actually make specific accounts with different name sessions for different APIs so that they only have access to certain projects that where the user's coming from they'd normally have access to. So it's actually not too uncommon to create multiple name sessions and just use the specific one you want with the appropriate permissions for a particular API.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know as well. All right.
Another thing you can do to the accounts too, Angel, is you can also on those service accounts, as that's kind of what we call them, is
Uh-huh.
it's also in the chat. You could set them to can't use portal, so that let's say for some reason someone does get rerouted to the portal, it it will have we have inherent permission where you can restrict people and say, hey, you don't have access to the portal, so they can't get to the back end.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see that. Perfect. That's really good to know as well. That's helpful. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. All right, cool, cool. All right. Well, I'm waiting for more questions. Y'all got them, bring them on. All right, all right. I don't mind going back into this a little bit while we're waiting. At least give you all some content, while we're not just sitting here. So let's go back into that health score because I want to give a little bit more overview before we start changing things and seeing how it affects the health score. Because not every way that the health score is effective, it's necessarily intuitive. So for example, here, these data structures, right? I have for this one that has an 80% health score, I have an inefficient oh, sorry, this is the flow. For this one, I have inefficient file data handling and data structures and data type database storage. So let me explain this first one real quick, the database data type storage. If you're creating a data structure, something that's going to be stored in the database, so not like a flow structure, something that'll actually be stored there. Let's call this test, all right? And I will call this DB file. There aren't going to be any issues if I create this. This will make a perfectly healthy database structure. However, if I change this to file data, you'll see I get this warning at the bottom here. Because file data is a decisions framework type that isn't going to be compatible with ORM by default, which is how the database is handling this field. Decisions has a workaround that works just fine for binary serialization. However, it does have potential performance indications by doing that. So if I were to create any data structure that has one of these ORM incompatible fields, I am going to get a 25% on that health score right out the bat, no matter how many other fields I have in my data structure. So if I go back there, that's exactly what happened with the one that was here. I have a file data structure that got saved there, and because of that, I'm getting this error. Speaking of file data, there's a lot of stuff that file data can cause. If you try to store file data in any database stored structure, like an entity, database structure, case entity, you're going to get this performance, um, I guess, health warning per se that is going to say that you are storing your file data inefficiently. This is regardless of how many file data fields you have within your structure. If you have even one, this drops from 100% to 50%. So that's something worth keeping in mind with your project health and how you're trying to build your decisions environment. Here we have some other ones. I don't have any validation issues, right? I don't have anything that's breaking my data structure. Sure, maybe the data type isn't the most efficient, but it's not breaking anything. I don't have an excessive data structure size. I don't have a recursive data structure that's depending on a data structure that then depends on itself. And I don't have any problems with the data structure, any sort of like weird status that it's in. So that's how the database structures work. Let's see. I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment. Oh, wait. You raised your hand. Did you have a question? Here, I can unmute you. Hey, Wade, how's it going?
Hello, good. You hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Um, so we have we're calling an external service, a REST service,
Okay.
and I set up my service, the base URL, and I set up the different methods. What is the best or what is you guys' best practice as far as like I want to change depending on like what I guess I'll a little bit start over. We have a decisions dev, test, and prod, right?
Okay.
And as I send updates from dev to test and then prod, I want the base URL of that service to change along with it. I want we
Hmm.
because we'll have a the service URL that it's going to the same thing. We'll have for that external service, we'll have uh, a dev, test, and prod. So the method is the same, but the service URL, would, of course, would change with those. So
Hmm.
like, what's your best practices as I guess essentially making that service URL change depending on the environment that it's getting called from.
Excuse me. There are a few different ways that you can approach that, and I want to discuss. There are at least two that come to my mind that seem like reasonable approaches to this problem. The first one is if you have service URLs that just have differences between them, but they aren't completely different. Maybe you could do something like, our, I'm just going to put our decision. Oh, whoops. Where's my forward slash forward slash? Right. And maybe I have a following um, directory after that. I can put the name in here and I'll just call this variable. When I do that, I'm going to get this error here, of course, right? But as long as I put in these two curly brackets, whenever I'm calling this service method, I now have an option in my flow to pass in dynamically any sort of value for this. So if you had something like a split string, not a split string, sorry, a string match step, that determines what environment you're in, you could then send the appropriate variable to this service URL that would dynamically alter which service you're calling based upon just that set in the flow. Is that making sense? Or I can jump into that as well.
Yeah. The direction I got though would be it would be before up to the .com, so the left side of that.
Okay, okay.
That's the direction that I was given, is that part would change.
That would very much work. Another thing that you can do is similar in design where you have that string match step, right? I'll go into, you know what, let me get out of this. Let me go into our lunch and learn here. Well, that was fun. All right, there we go. So, split string. I keep calling it that. It's a string match step. I'm not splitting anything. There we go. Another way to approach this dynamically. Oh, lovely. It doesn't like updating. Give me a moment. So I'll go back in here. Now it's going to show up. Is you have one of these, and it's the same sort of thing, right? You list it as like dev, prod, test, that sort of thing. And what you do is you individually create each and every integration in every environment. So there's an iteration of each one, but it only chooses which one to call based upon a flow data variable, right? So I can go in here, select from flow data. Maybe it's base portal URL matches so and so, so that way you can all of these are going to be different between your test, dev, and prod, right? So you could match this to the possible string matches. It goes down a different path here. I'll call this dev test prod. Whoops. And then there's a copy for each and every one of these, right? So now you can send it down a different path based upon whatever that base portal URL is. These would of course be just the base portal URLs themselves. And then just call a copy of each service, but the service is going to be created 3 different times, each with that different service URL. The benefit of this method is you have the option to test every service non-dynamically, like just what it is in every environment before sending it to production. The downside of this is, of course, you have to make 3 service methods. They're not all being called at once, but this is another reasonable approach to the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be
I
nice not to have to make 3 services, but I get why, it adds more testing capabilities. Yeah, I understand that part.
Right, right. So you get that. The first one you wouldn't have to. Once again, you could just alter it here and you could create like a, test URL. So maybe this is the, variable right here. I'll just call this website. So it gets mapped in slash whatever the following directories are slash test slash flow or whatever, right?
And I
Whoops.
wouldn't get any error, like after once I hit save, it wouldn't say, oh, you can't save because your ping is or ping result right there is URL format's bad or whatever.
No, it'll let you save it. You can create it
Okay.
right here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you can add the method to the service to follow up with that. So yeah, that would absolutely function fine. You can do it this way. And every time you're going to add one of these, you're just going to have more variables that you have to map into your flow. But you could do it this way. You could test, you could create one of these, test dev, test, and prod all with the same one, just using a test flow to map in different variables and make sure that they work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I saw in here, I think I saw there was something about an override base URL. Is that anything to mess with?
Override base URL. Can you show me exactly where you saw it? Was
Uh,
that in
it,
the services here?
it was, I'm trying to go
Edit
to,
service?
it was in the documentation. Let's see.
That's in the flow designer, override the URL.
Oh, okay. So once you're in so it's not in the service, it's in okay. Is that anything or not even mess with that?
Let's take a look.
I was just trying to find, solutions to like the first thing I thought of was, okay, I could just, like you did, I could make the whole service URL a parameter and do it that way and just speed it every time. Or
Right.
do
You could
do I
absolutely.
do I do I leave it as something and hit the override if
I
that's an option? I don't know.
I don't think override is what we're looking for here, but let me
Okay.
confirm real quick. I just want to add a method here. Slash work. I don't know what this is going to do. We'll just make this a post and we're going to save. As long as it hits okay. As long as I've got something that I can get that
The
same prompt in
override,
the flow.
yeah, the override URL, it's two different pieces. Override URL is dealing with when you're calling decisions as an API service. Then you can override your own URL for that flow. Instead of it being REST API, you can say it's Jared's API post call, and things like that. So if we go all the way to the top right, where you can configure that integration and say, okay, let's use API service, and then you have override service URL. That's what it means, that you have REST API /, and then you can supply any property you want. So you can say this is Jared's API, and that's the direction for this flow. What we're doing, what Gregory was showing earlier, is that's the way to create an integration to an external service like QuickBooks or Salesforce. And we can't change their endpoints because that's their endpoints, right? It's kind of like you're changing the door on someone else's house. You wouldn't do that because it's not your house.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess that'd probably be the method that I use is the second one where it, or at least the direction that I was given is like they didn't want to really make a bunch of services. They just wanted to make it a depending on the environment, feed it that service URL, whether it's dev test or prod. Okay.
Then yeah, this would probably be the approach in order to accomplish that.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. All right. I thank you for that. That
Yeah, of
explains everything
course.
very well.
Cool beans, yeah. All right, all right. Bring out the Q&A. I'm not seeing any others at the moment. So we're getting some questions. They're coming in slow. I'm going to give it about 2 or 3 more minutes. And if we don't get another question in that time, we may just call it an early lunch and learn. So let's go back, right? We're talking about the health scores. So one thing that it will also give a health score on, going back to our details here, let's go into our flows, all right? So I have a simple flow here, or sorry, I have a healthy flow here. And I want to go over the step names in the flow. This is under the maintainability category once again. And by default, when you drag a step onto the decisions flow designer canvas there, it is going to create a default name for that step. The step type remains the same. It's the same one that you dragged across, but it's going to create a name for it, right? So for example, in this flow, I added a catch exception step, and we can go in and take a look at that. Where'd it go? Hello? There we go. Right? And when I drag it onto the canvas, it's called catch exception 1. So if I leave it this way, our health, our project health is going to say you should make this more specific, right? So that we can get a better idea of what's going on in this environment. So the catch exception is pretty self-explanatory, right? There isn't a lot of extra stuff going on with that, but let's say that I wanted to add an add item to list step, right? I drag this, and because my decisions thing hasn't been restarted in a little bit and I'm running a lot on this, it's doing this to me. It's called add item to list step 1, right? I would need to change this to better be in line with what I'm trying to do in my system, so, or my business logic. So maybe I should be naming this, instead of add item to list, add client to call list, right? If I'm trying to set up a process that would do such a thing. Now, when I try to check my health score in this once again, it's going to update for 2 reasons. One, because I've got a step with a validation error, but also it's going to update in a positive way because I have changed all of the names of my steps. So if I exit, hit save, recalculate, and I'll go back into my healthy flow, we'll see that step names in flow is now at 100%, right? Description needs to be altered. I have not added a thorough enough description to this. And then This one is giving me a health score 0 because I have validation issues, right? I have a completely unconnected step. Hey, Wade, I see your hand again. You should still be able to talk. Well, hold on. All right, you should be able to talk now.
Yeah, sorry, I left and rejoined.
Oh, no
Sorry.
worries, no worries.
I found it was a different override thing that I was looking at. And just to see if again see if it was anything. It's not once you're in the flow, it's once you're editing the method to the service.
Okay, so we go
It
into our test method here, and I'm going to right click and edit it.
it's not the service, the method.
Ah, edit the method. Okay.
And once you edit the method, there is a override base URL, and then it looks like you can set it to the flow, the URL, or an OAuth token. Down below. Maybe
Show
it's
advanced
yeah,
options.
sorry, show advanced options, and then yeah, that.
Oh, interesting. All
And then you could
right.
get the base URL from the flow.
Okay, so that would be passing in a variable for the base URL and then specify the static base URL instead. Oh, this is a very interesting option. So what this would be doing is your method is designed to work relative to the base, right? You create your external service and then you create your method that has additional URL parameters added onto the base. So if our base portal URL was the HTTPS // decisions.com, then we don't need to add this whole thing in here. All we need to add is this because this would get added to the base that we created in our external services right here. It gets added to this base. This is our base URL that's getting called. So if we are going into this area right here, and we're going to show advanced options and override the base portal URL, sorry, base URL, then we are then overriding that initial service URL that's getting called. So I don't think that's necessarily going to assist with what you're looking for here, but you could specify a different static URL. This would still need to be either dynamically added, right? Or you could just use the curly bracket option, which tests the validity of that base URL in the beginning. So I would recommend doing that one,
Okay.
but this seems like another potential option to override the start. And if I can be honest, I have not tried using this particular override in this particular way.
Gotcha.
So this is something that I would need to look into and confirm what this would be used for instead of just specifying a variable in the service.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I was just exploring all methods so I could try to figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I can look into this a bit more and let you know if it's a viable option or not. I would still recommend the other one, but it'd be good to know exactly how this works, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Well, it has been a few more minutes. We've had a follow-up, but we haven't had any additional new questions. So I think I'm gonna start my countdown now. If someone's in the middle of typing a question, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll be glad to stop. But otherwise, oh, okay. All right, I see. My bad. Not trying to cut you off there, Satish. If you're typing your question, let me let you talk. You can finish typing your question. We'll have both of them, and you should be able to discuss now. What you got?
Hi, thanks, Gregory.
Hmm?
So basically, I'm trying to get all the assignments for a user, and I think I discussed this in one of the last meetings as well. So what I'm observing is I'm getting different results when I use the API. We have a decision score API, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you use the API or the internal service assignments, and then get current get current assignments by user email. And when I run a database query, I'm getting different results. So I raised a ticket to support as well. Yesterday they asked me to check it with fetch entities, and fetch entities is also giving me 5 results. So the thing is that I'm getting two different set of results when I use the API or when I use fetch entities or the database query.
Okay, let's take a look here. So you're trying to get all assignments and you're trying to filter it out by user?
Yes, by user email.
Okay. All right, so we're going to drag that on. We're going to exit, save, and jump back in. Give me a moment. I can restart services and make this function just like it should. You know what? Do that later. Let me go back into here. Nope. Here we go. All right, so we'll drag this. We'll edit this. This is going to be the assignment type. Grab that. And then you are adding fetch criteria here, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you're fetching it by user email.
Something called all assignments.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're going to match that with your input here, which I'm just going to make a constant for this example.
Right.
Okay. And when you mention that you fetch from here versus when you fetch from running the query, you get different results.
Fetch here and query, it's giving the same result, but the decision core API that is giving me different result. And 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 if you also go to the inbox, right, there's an option to go to inbox, and you
Right.
can see all the current assignments. So the number that's shown there matches the one that is written by API, but not the one written by fetch entities or the database SQL.
Okay. And your API one is calling the internal service.
Internal service, that's right.
Okay. I have a feeling what's going on is you might be just getting current assignments and not all assignments. So let me go back into this because this will fetch every assignment, whether it's current or not. The assignment
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
get deleted immediately. It still exists within there even after it's been completed. If we go to our assignment service
Mm-hmm.
and then we go down to the method name and you are using get
Get current assignments. Yeah.
Get current. Yep. So get current is only going to get the assignments that match with the inbox, right? So because anything that shows up in the inbox
Mm-hmm.
is anything that shows up with the default flag is current. So get current assignments by user email, right? That sort of thing.
Right, right. So
All
the thing
right.
is that like the one on the top, right, fetch entities is giving me 5 results, and the
Mhm.
one on the bottom, internal service, it's giving me 10 results.
It's giving you 10.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Like if the number was other way around, 10 and 5, then it makes sense. So currently I have 10 assignments in with my user, but the internal API is giving me correct proper results. When I use database query, it is giving me less number of rows.
How do you set up your query real quick? That is what
Sure.
criteria are you putting into it? So I understand that we're going to get all from the entity assignment table.
Mhm.
And then where all assignment equals or all assignment is like?
Entity assignment. Oh, is it not? Oh yeah, I think I used it correct. All yeah, entity assignments where all assignments equals email ID, or I just put like because there could be multiple emails in the other side.
Right. That's what I was asking about as well. So like, and then you put,
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to run that real quick. We may not have any assigned tab. Okay, we do. We have a few. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're fetching all that are here, and you're
Mm-hmm.
saying that this list
Mm-hmm.
is not as long as the other one. Interesting.
Right. So it's giving you 13 rows here, right? So if you go to the inbox, um, for me, gives me 5 rows here, and in the inbox, it shows 10.
And this is going to be is current true, is current
Mhm.
true, is current true, is current true, is current true. All right, so we'll go with that. Yeah, we'll
Mhm.
exit out. We'll go here. We'll go to inbox.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you see, it gives you a different number here. Okay, it's 8. Probably it's current. Probably you're getting the right one. Like if you have only 8 is current.
Hmm.
Oh, for my case, it gives me completely different result.
Yeah, we might need it might be possible that decision support is probably the route to go so they can actually go
Mhm.
into your environment and look into
Mhm.
it to see if anything got marked in a bad state because there are
Mhm.
three. I'm going to go into this and just so you have a better idea of what they're going to be looking for when they reach out to
Mhm.
you.
Okay.
So let's go into the query editor real quick and we're going to do select all
Mhm.
from entity underscore assignment. And I do believe I talked with you about this before, but it's still a good
Yes.
refresher. So
Yeah.
there are three primary fields that determine visibility, can the assignment be completed, all that sort of stuff. So there's completed, there's
Configure.
is assigned, and
Right.
is current. All right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Is assigned is going to make sure that the assignment has actually been sent out to someone, right? This by default should be true. This is a
Mhm.
default language one that gets created with the system, so don't worry about this one. This has to do with language test language. You don't have to worry about that one in particular.
Mhm.
Is current is what should determine whether it's showing in the inbox or not,
Inbox.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
However, completed should also, you know, oppositely reflect that in
Mhm.
most cases. If you want it
Mhm.
to be current, then completed should be false. If you don't want to be current, completed should be true, and vice versa. So it would be worth looking to make sure that all of those are matching up correctly. Otherwise, you
Mhm.
might have the wrong count being displayed to your inbox.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Also, one last question on this. When you're querying this, are you
Mhm.
querying it from an assignment, sorry, as a designer or as an admin?
I think I have admin role. I have admin role.
Okay, okay, cool. Just want to make sure there weren't any potential like permissions or hidden
Permission.
things from there.
Right.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound like that's a problem with that.
Mhm.
Okay, but yeah, they'll be looking into that with your environment. And I will say that I don't think that we can make some guesses at what's wrong, but I don't think we can definitively say what the cause is until we get in your environment and take a look at it. So
Right.
I think support's going to be the best route for you there.
Right. But so I'm referring to the right table, right? The entity assignment is what will
Yes,
have all these current
that is
assignments.
absolutely the correct table. Yeah, that has current and non-current assignments.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So is there a way to create a view in decisions?
Yes,
Just
yes, there
like
is. Let's go to data. Here, we'll go to data structures right now. Create data types,
okay.
databases, and then go to database integration. You can
Yeah.
add a procedure, a table, a view, a relationship, or a query.
Okay.
Yep.
So
And
when
then
I
I just
Mhm.
select local connection, right? The one that decisions is
Mhm.
running against. And that
Okay.
shows all of the different tables that I can, fetch for that. So let's take a look. Is the
If I want
assignment
to create a new view, can I do it from here?
right? Add view integration. Well, you might have to create it on the database and then integrate it into decisions rather than create the view in decisions. Because I do not see the assignment as a possible table to create a view on.
Mhm.
Yeah, what a view is it's a database construct where if there's a query you know you're going to frequently use a lot and you just want to have an easy way to reference that view to report on, you'd have to create that on the database level. And then once you create that query that says, hey, select asterisk from entity underscore assignment and whatever your where clause filter is, then you can create a view off that and then integrate with that view on the database side. So that'd be something if you have access to the database, you have to create it there, or you'd
Mhm.
have to talk to your IT ops team to see if they can get that view created for you.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right. Did you have any further questions on that?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Cool, cool. Let's take a look. Well, you're the last one in here. And if you don't have any more questions, I think we're just going to end our lunch and learn now then. Thank you all for attending. Hope this was quite helpful or maybe will be quite helpful in the future.